All right, so both say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. A good night of Shabbos, everyone. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors. To thank our Talmud Torah, our Talmud Torah sponsor for the month of Nisan, Said and Semehakin, for dedicating all the Shir and Drushos this month to show their Hakaras Hatov to Hashem for all of His Nisim and Niflos. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu redeem all of the hostages, bring complete Hatzlacha to Eretz Yisrael and to Am Yisrael. Our week of learning sponsors, Paul and Kathy Pollack, in memory of Paul's father, Shmuel ben Zechariah, and great-grandmother Cyril Bas Dov. And Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Matt Leibowitz, as a zuchus for his father, Mark Leibowitz, who is undergoing a medical procedure today. May everything be with tremendous Hatzlacha, and may he have a complete and speedy refuah shalema. With that, let us begin. We have a lot to do today, Baruch Hashem, and have the incredible schos also to begin a new parak today, B'Shad Tova U'Mitzlachos. So let's get started. Today's daf is Mem Daled 44, and we are picking up in Meretz Hashem on Mem Gimel Amud Beis at the two dots, about 20 lines up. Rabbi Akiva. So actually, if you see Tosfos, Rabbi Akiva, the Reish Ayin over there, and just move your finger to the left and about 2 lines up, you'll be exactly where we are. Rabbi Akiva Omer Kishas Hatvia. So we'll say, remember again, going back to yesterday's Mishnah, we had the fascinating discussion, really riveting discussion about if I deposit something with a shomer, and then the object, let's say again, he ends up misappropriating it, or it ends up breaking or getting lost, halacha l'maisa, and the value of the item changes over time. At what value is the shomer obligated to go ahead and compensate me, the owner of the object? So we had a 3-way machlokes in the Mishnah. We had Beis Shammai. Ultimately, again, Beis Shammai says you pay. Shomer always pays the higher of the two amounts, whichever the two. In other words, the shomer always pays the higher amount, the higher value. Beis Hillel says kishas hotza'ah, which literally meant at the time that the item was removed. We spent a considerable amount of time yesterday trying to figure out what exactly that means. And now we are up to Rabbi Akiva, who says kishas hatviyah. So you pay in accordance with the value of the item at the time that the shomer is brought to Beis Din. Tviyah literally means a claim. So at the time that the claim is lodged. Okay, Rashi says over here, Kishash Shita Venel Din. Fine, so now we're going to begin with Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva, Omer Kishash Hatviyah, Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, Halachak Rabbi Akiva, Talachak Rabbi Akiva. So essentially what Rabbi Akiva is saying is like this. We assess the value of the item at the time that legal proceedings are initiated. So at the time that I, the owner, bring the shomer to Beis Din, that's when we assess the value of the object. Umod Rabbi Akiva agrees with Makom Sheyesh Edim. So it's actually an interesting case. Rabbi Akiva will agree in a situation where there are Edim. Now, what does it mean in a situation where there are Edim? Take a look at Rashi. Umod Rabbi Akiva Makom Sheyesh Edim. Rashi says over here, Kama Haisa Shava B'Yom Shegazlo. So this is actually very interesting. So Rashi says like this: if you have witnesses that show up, and the witnesses testify that shomer, right, that the custodian stole the object, and they testify about when the act of theft occurred. So we know exactly when the act of theft occurred. Now let's say, for example, I deposited with Reuven, a golden cup. So then, and he stole it on Friday, April 12th. Right? It's Friday Gimel Nisan. So now we'll say, I can go back afterwards and we can figure out what the value of gold was on Friday, April 12th for Gimel Nisan. So even Rabbi Akiva will agree that if you have witnesses, the value, and so therefore we know exactly when the act of theft took place, we could go ahead and ascertain the exact value of the item at the time it was stolen. In other words, when Rabbi Akiva says kishas hatviyah, then normally we value the stolen or the disputed object at the time of the claim. That's when we don't know exactly when everything occurred. Right now, all I know is that Silber is bringing the shomer to Beis Din, so then we'll go ahead and we'll assess the value of the item right here and now. But if I know through witnesses when exactly everything occurred, we'll lock in the value as of then. Okay, my timer. Why do we say this? Because the pasuk says, "Lasher hu lo yitnenu biyom ashmaso." So literally again, to he who he is obligated to give, he will give on the day of his guilt. So the Gemara says, and since ultimately again there are witnesses now, right? There are witnesses testifying ultimately again to when the actual act of theft occurred. So therefore, again, that is called Yom Ashmaso. So I just want to point out what's happening over here. Under normal circumstances, Rabbi Akiva says, what's the definition of your day of guilt? Right? Yom Ashmaso. When is that? When you're brought to Beis Din. That's right, when you're with the Tviyah. However, if there are witnesses are showing up and saying, no, it's not the day he was brought to Beis Din, it was Friday, it was last Tuesday, whatever it was, then that becomes Yom Hashmaso, and then that date determines the value of the item. Very interesting. So Rabbi Oshia said to Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi, Ata Omer came. So Rabbi Oshia asked Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi, do you hold like this? Do you hold like Rabbi Akiva? So Ata Omer came. Hachi Amr Rabasi Amr Rabbi Yochanan Chalukay Rabbi Akiva Filu b'makom sheyesh edim. Because Rabbi said there's an alternate version. The alternate version of this is that no, even in a situation where there are witnesses, Rabbi Akiva still holds that the value of the item is locked in when? At the time of the tviyah, at the time of the claim. So the Gemara says, my time, what's the reason? The Amakra, La Sherhu lo yitnenu b'yom ashmaso, ubeidino hu kamechayvele ashma. Because we'll say in this version of Rabbi Akiva, Yom Ashmaso always means when you're brought to Beis Din. Since it is Beis Din who will establish your guilt or your innocence. Now, as Rabbi said, is that we know this, but even if you have witnesses, right? Witnesses by themselves are not the determinant of guilt or innocence, right? What's the determinant? Beis Din. You come to Beis Din, right, will investigate the witnesses. Are they saying correctly? So therefore, again, two versions of Rabbi Akiva. In version 1 of Rabbi Akiva, there are two different possibilities for valuation of the stolen object. Either A, when you're brought to Beis Din, the day of the tviyah, the day of the claim, or B, if there are witnesses, so we can establish an exact time, an exact date for when the act of theft occurred, will lock in the value as of then. In the alternate version of Rabbi Akiva, there's no such distinction. Value of the item is always determined by when the shomer is brought to Beis Din, for it is Beis Din who determines your guilt or your innocence. Incredible. When you go, this was incredible. Rabbi Abba says to Rabbi Papa, Rabbi Zera said to Rabbi Abba Bar Papa, when you go to Hassam is Eretz Yisrael, when you have the schus to travel to Eretz Yisrael, Akif Asulma Ditzur. So Rabbi said, this is incredible. He says, literally again, ascend the ladder of Tzur, V'ol Ligabei de Rav Yaakov Bar Idi, and go in to see Rav Yaakov Bar Idi. We'll take a quick look at Rashi. Rashi says over here, Akif, Herba Saderach V'sivev Derech Haruka Al Davar Laleches Derech Malos Shal Har Tzur. So apparently Rabbi Yaakov lived on a mountain. He lived on Har Tzur. Uboy minei masham Rabbi Yochanan Rabo al kach kol mahalich derech haruka b'makom shish kitzara makifu. So it says, this is very interesting. So what Rabbi Zir is saying to Rabbi Abba is when you go to Eretz Yisrael, so literally akif asulma detzur. Take the long way. Here ba'as haderech v'sivei derech haruka al davar zeh laleches derech malos shahatzur. So essentially what says is really incredible. What he's saying is ascend the mountain, and go ask Rabbi Yaakov what it is, what he feels about this particular issue. So I will say, by the way, it's also so profound. A lot of times, if you want to attain MS is often always only attained if you're willing to scale the mountain, right? MS never comes and lays down at your feet. The truth is, nothing meaningful in life ever really just comes to you. If you want truth, right? If you want MS, if you want, quote unquote, to reach resolution, and whatever level of accomplishment you want in life, you have to be willing to scale the mountains. You have to be willing to take the long road. You have to be willing to put in the effort. It's really incredible. So go and find out. So I will ask him, find out, does he hold like Rabbi Akiva or not? That's the shayla. Amar lehacha, so I will say, scale the mountain. Amar lehacha Rabbi Yochanan, halachak Rabbi Akiva liolam. By the way, what a profound statement. The halacha follows Rabbi Akiva forever. What does that mean? The Gemara says, "Maili olam." We'll say, what does that mean, the olam? Ravashi shelo tomar hani mili heicha deleka edim aval heicha diika edim lo. So Rabbi say, so first of all, what it could mean like this. You might have thought, when does the halacha follow Rabbi Akiva? Like we were just mentioning before. When does the halacha follow Rabbi Akiva? Namely, that you go ahead and you establish the value of the item kishas hatvi at the time of the claim. That's when there aren't witnesses, right? But if there are witnesses, then halacha l'maisa, again, we go based on the testimony of the witnesses, and we lock in culpability based on that. Kamash malano, the halacha follows Rabbi Akiva li'olam, forever, meaning that halacha l'maisa, we always value the object based on the time of the claim. Good v'inami da'ahadre leduchta ve'itbara. So we'll say furthermore, even in a case of say where halacha l'maisa, you took an object, right? Remember, we spoke about this concept extensively. The shomer took an object and then he returned it back to its spot, right? So he misappropriated, but he returned it. And after he returned it, it broke. That halacha l'maisa you're still chayiv. Why? Lafuki mid Rabbi Shmuel da'amar lo ba'inon das bailim. So also remember, we had this machlokes. When you take something and you return it, do you need das bailim? Do you need the knowledge of the owner in order to go ahead and affect a complete hashava? So Rabbi Shmuel says you do not. Right? Kamash malon de ba'inon das bailim. Therefore, again, I will say, Kamash Malan der Aloch Lamaisa Rabbi Akiva Paskins, you do require knowledge of the owner. Rava Amar, and Rava says halacha kabeisila. All right, so let's kind of throw that in over here. So let's say so again. So just to see what's happening over here is you see a very strong push to pass like Rabbi Akiva, and therefore again in a case of misappropriation or a case of where the shomer steals the item, then halacha l'maisa, the value of the item is established kishas hatvia at the time that the case is brought to court. Machlokes and Rabbi Akiva, whether or not he would hold that even if there are witnesses. Okay, but it sounds like from this last version of Rabbi Akiva, even if there are witnesses, then halacha l'maisa, again, we still go by shas hatvia. Then you have Rava coming along, and Rava kind of like, it's interesting, like literally, you almost see like a last-ditch effort, right? They're about to end shir, we're about to finish the Gemara, right? About to get to the Mishnah, and Rava says, halacha follows Beis Hillel. Like he puts that in there, again, and Beis Hillel says kishas hotzah, at the time that literally, again, the object is removed. So that could even mean destroyed, consumed, like we saw in yesterday's daf. So I will say, so remember again, we already saw, I know I kind of jumped the gun a little bit, but we already saw the halacha l'maisa on the sugya yesterday. Remember again, the Rambam essentially paskins like Rava, because it says Rava, but the Gersa changes it to Rava, like Rava on Amud Aleph, which is how do we establish the value of the misappropriated or stolen item? So we'll say, if you remember again, in a case where let's say it was worth 1 zuz when the shomer stole it, and then again 4 zuz at the time that he misappropriates it. So then remember again that halacha l'maisa, it depended. What did it depend on? So how it was consumed. If it was a situation where halacha l'maisa, the shomer consumed it himself or went ahead and broke it, then we lock in the higher value. So this was yesterday's daf, this was Rava, right? If ultimately, again, it broke on its own, then he would pay the value of the item at the time that it was stolen. But that is only in a case where it appreciates. In a case of depreciation, the shomer is always going to pay kishas hagzela, the value of the item at the time that he stole it. So the Rambam effectively paskins like Rava on Amud Aleph, which also includes elements of Beis Hillel. Okay, I'll say that finishes that. So I'll just mention that line of halacha Rabbi Akiva li'olam. Halacha Rabbi Akiva li'olam is a pretty dramatic statement, and perhaps embedded in that, I will say, is a profound yesod. That what does it mean halacha Rabbi Akiva li'olam? First of all, it's just a strange statement in general to make. Okay, so the Gemara tries to qualify it. So I will say, Rabbi Akiva possessed many qualities, but amongst Rabbi Akiva's most dominant and profound and strong qualities was an unbreakable sense of optimism and of hope. Right? Rabbi Akiva, at the end of Maseches Makos, when everyone is crying over the destruction, Rabbi Akiva is the one who always says, Chevra, it's going to be okay. Somehow, some way, we are going to navigate ourselves out of this situation. When Rabbi Akiva was the one who, in being executed in such a barbaric fashion, was able to show his Talmidim how you could pull out spiritual growth even from the most overwhelming of circumstances. Rabbi Akiva was the one who always felt that tshuva is always possible. Rabbi Akiva felt that change is always possible. So halacha k'Rabbi Akiva li'olam could be meant on a deeper hashkafic level. Can I say that the halacha, really the hashkafa of life, follows Rabbi Akiva li'olam. If you want eternality in this world, if you want to know that you could overcome any type of circumstance, halacha k'Rabbi Akiva. Keep a sense of hope. Keep a sense of optimism. Keep a sense of resolve and purpose, and recognize that you are part of something nitzchi, a part of something eternal. If you hold halacha k'Rabbi Akiva, then in Metzia Hashem, we will have li'olam. Then we will have eternality. Lose your hope. Lose your optimism, fall into a sense of yeush, become depressed, then ultimately again, there's no tomorrow. And I was saying, this concept resonates with such a profound sense of urgency and such a profound sense of, in these days, we mamish need Rabbi Akiva more than anything. I was saying, you read the headlines sometimes and you wonder to yourself, what is a person even supposed to do with this? Right, you read the headlines this morning that again they expect Iran to do something within the next 24 to 48 hours, and you could read that and you could look at that and you could say, oy vavoy, what's going to be? What's going to be? I would say, but the greatness and the power of Klal Yisrael is halacha k'Rabbi Akiva li'olam. Halacha k'Rabbi Akiva li'olam. I will say, Rabbi Akiva died at the hands of barbaric oppressors, the Romans. Yet, we are still here thousands of years later learning Rabbi Akiva's Torah. Why? Because halacha k'Rabbi Akiva li'olam. The halacha of Rabbi Akiva, what's the halacha of Rabbi Akiva? Hold your head high, look forward, be optimistic, be hopeful, put your trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ribono Shel Olam has our back. That's the halacha of Rabbi Akiva. And if you hold that way, li'olam, then in Metzia Hashem, we will be gebenched as individuals and as a people with incredible, profound, and beautiful eternality. Let's go back to Mishnah. Hachoshev l'shloach yabe b'kadon. So we'll say this over here is an incredible Gemara. So if a shomer, this is so interesting, if a shomer has in mind to misappropriate, right? So again, he's not doing anything right now. He just, in his mind, he's making, it's always good to plan out your day, right? So 5:45, 5:50 the daf, 6:45 shachris, 8:30 misappropriation, right? I'm gonna put it, say it's his intention to go ahead and misappropriate the property. But I want to be clear, he didn't do anything. He didn't do anything yet, right? So achoshev l'shloach yah bepikadon. Beis Shammai omrim chayiv. Beis Shammai says that you're chayiv. Ubeis Hillel omrim eno chayiv ad sheyishlach bo yas. Well, it's actually pretty incredible. So Beis Shammai says that you are actually chayiv for intention. Now look at Rashi. Rashi says achoshev l'shloach yad. Omer b'fnei edim. Etel piktono shel ploni liatzmo. So it's so interesting. So the shomer goes ahead and says in front of witnesses, I am going 8:30 a.m. guys, if you want to see, right? I am going to misappropriate the item that was deposited with me. Okay, so Beis Shammai says that is enough to make you chayiv. Beis Hillel says eno chayiv ad sheyishlach bo yad. Beis Hillel says no, you're not chayiv until you actually misappropriate. Shneimar im lo shalach yado b'molachas re'ehu. The pasuk says if you did not send your hand literally again against the object of your friend. Okay, so we'll say so fundamental machlokes over here. Now again, I want to point out over here, what does it mean when Beis Shammai says you're chayiv, right? Because at the end of the day, I will say, think about this just a moment, right? I have in mind to go ahead and steal your wallet. And I even say in front of the witnesses, I'm going to steal Reuven's wallet. Can I be liable for that? No. So what's going on over here? So in other words, let's just play this out. I deposit an object with Reuven, right? Reuven says in front of witnesses, and sends witnesses, I am going to misappropriate it. I'm just telling him I'm going to do it. Reuven hasn't done anything yet. So how could he be chayiv? So if you look at Rashi, Rashi says over here, chayiv ba'onsim mehayom v'hala im ne'enas chayiv b'achrayos. Oh. So we'll say, what does chayiv mean? Chayiv means that since I've articulated as I've articulated, an intent to misappropriate, I now become fully responsible for the object. So obviously, at that moment right now, I'm not chayiv anything, I didn't do anything. But since I expressed the intention to misappropriate, I now have a heightened level of responsibility for this particular object. And halacha l'maisa, if something happens to it, I'm chayiv. Beis Hillel says, no way. You don't assume responsibility, heightened responsibility for something unless you do a maisa, unless you do an action. So the Gemara says as follows. The Gemara says, "Shneimar im lo shalai." Good. Mishnah. Hita es achavis v'nat leimen aravias v'nishbara ena mashalim el aravias. Well, it's an interesting case over here. So still misappropriation. Shomer goes over to. So I deposit with Reuven a barrel of wine. Reuven goes over to the barrel of wine. What does he do? He tilts it, takes a ravias of wine. Let's say afterwards, the barrel breaks, an ones. So what's the halacha? Reuven is only chayiv for the ravias of wine that he took. Now why is that? Because remember again, misappropriation requires the shomer to actually acquire the object. Tilting the barrel is not an act of kinyan. There was no hagbah, no lifting. So because he just tilted it, he never really fully misappropriated. In other words, because he tilted it, he didn't acquire the barrel. The only thing he misappropriated was what? A ravias of wine. And therefore, even if the barrel subsequently breaks, he's not chayiv for own. So assuming he's a shomer chinam. And therefore, halacha l'maisa, he just has to pay for the ravias. So the Gemara says, Higbia v'natali men ravias. However, if the shomer lifted up the barrel and then took a ravias of wine, and then the barrel broke, then what? B'shad l'meikol. Then Rabbi says he's responsible for everything. He's responsible for the entire barrel, which makes sense, right? Why? Because halacha l'maisa, since he lifted it up, therefore he's going to be chayiv because of the barrel. I'll just mention something interesting. Why is it that, you think about this, according to Beis Shammai's case, why would a guy announce in front of witnesses that he's about to misappropriate something? Right? Why would he say it? So of course, Pashup Shat is what's happening over here. He's just talking, right? He's running his mouth. He'll say, but sometimes the best way to prevent yourself from doing something wrong is to create a sense of accountability to others. We learn this in Chassidus when we were learning B'nai Machshava Tova. The power of being part of a chabura, the power of being part of a group, is that sometimes, on both sides, there's a lot of things that I would do, when it's just me and myself. But the moment that I have like a sense of group accountability is the moment that sometimes that keeps me from doing certain things wrong. If I know that I'm accountable, right, this is the Piagetzna's whole chap of this was, if you know that you're accountable to a chabura, there's a group of people who you're growing with, who you're learning with, who you're talking with, and who you're confiding in, a lot of times having to share something with someone else keeps you. So let's say, what we thought about this Mishnah is, maybe the reason why Reuven is saying this in front of two witnesses is that what is he really trying to do? What is he trying to do? He's saying, guys, stop me. Let's say it's so important to have good friends who you could confide in, but a good friend, I will say, is someone who's not just going to yes you all the time. A good friend is someone who's going to say, you know what? That's stupid. Right? That's stupid, or that's really not appropriate, or that's beneath you. I mean, you can say it nicer, right? But that's not something you should be doing. So maybe that's why Reuven is saying something in front of witnesses. What he's really hoping is, if I tell you kind of what's in my mind and what I want to do, maybe again, good friends will step in and prevent me from making mistakes. All right, Mem Dalim 44a. Minhani Mili. So we'll say, so where is this from? In other words, so we have fundamental machlokes Yeshan Beis Hillel. Where does this machlokes ultimately emanate from? We'll say, what is this? Okay, what is this? Minhani Mili. The Tanur Abanan Al Kol Davar Pesha. Right? The pasuk says ultimately again that the shomer is chayiv for any pesha, means literally iniquity. The shomer is chayiv for any act of trespass. So what does this mean? So Beishamay or Melami shechayiv al machshava kimaisa. So Al Kol Davar Pesha says Beishamay. What do you see from here? That even once you express the intent to misappropriate and you do so in front of witnesses, there's liability already for that. Because Al Kol Davar Pesha means for any iniquity, which is a pretty kind of expansive term. Beis Hillel says, no. Enu chayiv ad sheishlach bo yad. Not true. You're only chayiv if you actively engage in the act of misappropriation, some type of actual physical misappropriation. Shenemar imlo shalach yado b'meleches re'ehu. Right? Beis Hillel says, the pasuk says, you extend your hand against the deposit of your friend. So in other words, it's not enough just to think it; you're actively doing something. So Amru lahen Beis Shammai Beis Hillel. So Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, "V'alo kvar nemar al kol davar pesha." So Beis Shammai says to Beis Hillel, "But what do you do at our pasuk? Al kol davar pesha." So Beis Hillel says, you could quote me a pasuk, I could quote you a pasuk. So I, Beis Hillel, what are you going to do with the pasuk of Al Kol Davar Pesha? What do you do with that? So the Gemara says, listen to this. This is fascinating. Shabbos Beis Hillel will say like this. Al Kol Davar Pesha means like this. I only know that there's a din of misappropriation when? By the shomer himself. That if the shomer misappropriates, there's liability for that. Okay. Amar li avdo, bless you. Amar li avdo ulishlucha minayin. How do I know? This is fascinating. How do I know? I deposit an object with Ruvain, right? Barrel of wine, right? Ruvain goes ahead, and if Ruvain misappropriates it, is chayiv. How do I know that if Ruvain goes ahead and tells his eved or his shaliach to misappropriate, minayin, how do I know that Ruvain is chayiv? Now both say, that would be a big chiddush. Why would that be a big chiddush? Because normally what do we say? What do we say? There's no agency for the commission of a wrongful act or a commission of an aveira. Everyone is responsible. So how do I know about misappropriation is different? That in the case of misappropriation, if Ruvain instructs his eved, his shaliach, his kid to go ahead and take some of the wine, that Ruvain is chayiv. Talmud lomar al kol davar pesha. So I will say, we know that halacha l'maisa, we paskin like Beis Hillel in this particular situation, and therefore halacha l'maisa, you're only chayiv for misappropriation if you actually do something. In other words, expression of intent, even in front of witnesses, does not create any type of liability. You're only chayiv halacha l'maisa if you actually go ahead and do it. And I will say, interestingly enough, we also pass like Beis Hillel in this particular situation as well, which is that one is chayiv, what the shomer is chayiv for misappropriation if he instructs someone else to do it on his behalf. So the incredible halacha. All right, let's go back. Let's finish up the parak. So hita esachavis. So remember again, the Mishnah said, remember this case. So right, I deposit a barrel of wine with Ruvain. So remember again, two cases. If Ruvain goes ahead and tilts the barrel and takes wine from it, and then the barrel subsequently breaks, what's the halacha? Ruvain is chayiv for the revius, but not chayiv for the rest of the barrel. As opposed to if Ruvain lifts up the barrel and takes a revius of wine and then puts it back down and it breaks, Ruvain is chayiv for everything, because the act of hagbah, the act of lifting it, has acquired it for Ruvain, therefore he has full responsibility. Amar Rabba says, Lo shana ela nishbara. Shabbos like this will say. So halacha l'maisa, if Ruvain picks up the barrel, takes a revius of wine, puts it back down, then the barrel breaks, Ruvain is chayiv for the entire barrel, right? Because it breaks. So Rabbi says only if it breaks. Sorry. Wrong case. In the case of tilting, right? So Ruvain goes ahead and tilts the barrel, takes a revius of wine. The barrel subsequently breaks. What is Ruvain chayiv for? The revius. Right? So Rabbi says that's only talking about if it breaks. Avalich mitzah mishalim eskula. So Rabbi say this is fascinating. However, let's say Ruvain takes a revius of wine, and what happens? The rest of the barrel turns to vinegar. It sours. In that case, I will say Ruvain is chayiv for the entire barrel, even though he never lifted it. My timer, what's the reason? So the Gemara says, Girei didehu da'ahanula. So I will say this is very interesting. So Rashi points out over here that apparently what often prevents wine from turning is having the entire barrel filled. I guess maybe it's the airspace or maybe something else, but that accelerates the rate of spoilage. So it's interesting that even if Ruvain didn't pick up the barrel, he only tilted it, but he took a revius of wine and the rest of the barrel turned sour, Ruvain has that full responsibility for the spoilage because he caused that. He directly caused that. Quite fascinating. Higbiya v'natali menu. So the next case in the Mishnah was Ruvain lifted up the barrel and ultimately again took some of the contents and then put it back down. And then if the barrel breaks, he's chayiv for everything because he did an act of hagbah. So Amar Shmuel, lo natal mamish. The truth is, it doesn't even have to be that he actually took wine. Ela kevan sheig bi lital afa pisha lo natal. So Rabbi say, Shmuel says over here like this. The real ikr in this case, Rabbi say, is not whether or not Reuven took wine. That's not really what it's about. What is it about? That he picked up the barrel. Once he picked up the barrel, Rabbi say, so again, that's active misappropriation, even though he never took anything. Even though he never took anything, and therefore he's going to be chayiv. The Gemara says, oh, that's interesting, because we spoke about this extensively. Lema kasavar Shmuel, shlichos yad eina tzricha chisaron. So we learned this. So what do you see from here? Clearly, Shmuel holds misappropriation does not require diminution. Amri lo shani. So the Gemara says, fine. So Amri lo, not necessarily. Shani hacha. This case is different. Why? So it's possible that maybe this case is different. Why? Because halacha l'maisa, Reuven intends on taking his revius of wine. Plans on taking it, but it's in his best interest that this revius remain mixed with the rest of the wine, right? Because remember again, I'll say that his revius will stay fresh, so to speak, when mixed with the rest of the wine. Okay, so the Gemara says by Rav Ashi. So Rav Ashi has the following shayla. He says, look at Rashi says, Chavis bases lahai revius, shetishmar osam revius, velo tachmitz, uli olum shlichos bedavar achar tzricha chisar. So maybe in general, misappropriation requires diminution. Just this case is different. Why? Because Reuven doesn't want to take out his revius until when? Until he's actively going to drink it. Because his revius is best preserved together in the barrel, but in general, misappropriation does require diminution. All right, along those same lines, by Rav Ashi, Higbia arniki lital hemen a dinar. So also listen to this case. Let's say I deposited with Reuven a bag of money. Reuven lifted up the bag with the intention to take out 1 dinar. That's his intention, but he didn't take it out yet. So I will say, so now mahu. So I will say, the shaila is Reuven guilty of misappropriation? So he lifted up the bag, there's a hagbah, but he did not yet take out the dinar. Remember again, his intention is not to steal the bag. His intention is only to steal 1 dinar. So what's the halacha mao? Chamrahu delo minter ela agav chamra. So also on one hand we could say that halacha l'may says only wine, right? Only wine where I could say Reuven wants his revius of wine preserved as part of the rest of the barrel. Aval zuzah minter, but a dinar, Rabbi say a dinar could be preserved, so to speak, or could be secured even outside of the money bag. Odilma shining the tirusa, the arniki min tirusa the dinar, or maybe not, or maybe ultimately again there is a difference, Rabbi say, between guarding a coin that is in a bag of money, which is a little bit easier, than guarding a coin on its own. Which the Gemara says teku. Now Rabbi say, now we know for our purposes we already dealt with this sugya, right? So again, so just for our purposes, halacha l'maisa, what kind of comes out over here is 2 different halachas. Number 1, if the shaliach just tilted the barrel and took a revius of wine, he's only chayiv for the misappropriation of the revius, even if the barrel subsequently breaks. If he picks up the barrel, then halacha l'maisa again, he is chayiv, and the barrel breaks, he's going to be chayiv for the totality of the barrel. Now we'll say, we already learned the halacha l'maisa. What's the halacha l'maisa? We hold shlichos yad, we hold misappropriation does not require chisaron. Misappropriation does not require diminution. That's how the Rambam paskin. So therefore, once the shaliach picks up the object, again, with the intention to misappropriate, so he's done a meiser. But remember again, kavana to misappropriate doesn't do anything. We don't hold like Beis Shammai. So intention doesn't. But once he does a meiser of misappropriation, even if halacha l'maisa, he does not go ahead and actively diminish, he's going to be chayav. We'll say, Hadran halacha mafkid, mazel tov. Okay. We'll say, very exciting, Parak Hazav, one of the hardest prakim in Bava Metzia. But we got this, right? We absolutely got this. Let's go weiter. Hazav, konas hakesef en konas hazav. Okay, we'll say, word of introduction. Actually, let's take a look at Rashi. So literally, gold acquires silver, silver can't acquire gold. What are we talking about over here? Take a look at Rashi. We'll say this is a very important Rashi. First Rashi of the new parak. Hazav konas hakesef halokeach dinari zav tevuim. Okay, so we'll say get ready for this. So a person goes ahead and is purchasing gold coins. Halokeach dinari zav tevuim. Tevuim means they're coined b'dinari kesef. So a person is purchasing gold coins with silver coins. That's what's happening over here, okay? So just imagine that I am purchasing gold coins from Reuven. How am I paying for those gold coins? How am I paying for them? Silver coins, okay. So Mashichas Hazav Konas HaKesef. The moment that I take possession of the gold coins, so Ruvain acquires the silver coins. All right. So the Gemara labal hazav v'nischayev lo zeh mishakibel dinari zav lo says lo dinari kesef ve'enu yochal lachzer bo. So we'll say what that means is like this. In this transaction, so the moment I take possession of the gold coins, so Ruvain the seller acquires the silver coins, and neither of us has the ability to back out of the transaction. Right? That's it. The transaction is done. Now we'll say, what's the chiddush? The transaction is done even though what? Ruvain hasn't actively received his payment. Right? Ruvain's acquired his silver coins, but again, he doesn't have physical possession of it. So neither could retract. Avala kesef eino kones hazav. But I will say, but the reverse is not true. In other words, if I paid Ruvain the money, right, I gave him the silver coins, tendering of the silver coins, the currency, does not acquire the gold on my behalf. Okay? So I'll say, let me just mention this outside for just a second, and then we'll go back inside. In any given case, right, of a transaction, there are two items. There's currency and there's merchandise. We're leaving aside karka right now. There's currency and there's merchandise. The way that it works is, taking of money does not acquire the merchandise. But taking of the merchandise acquires the money for the seller wherever that money is. That's the klal. That's the klal. So I will say, in general, the halacha is, if you give money to someone for an object, the tendering of money does not affect the transaction. I know it sounds counterintuitive to us because we assume always money affects everything. The tendering of money does not affect the transaction. A transaction is only considered to be complete when the purchaser takes possession of the merchandise. Now the chiddush is, once you take possession of the merchandise, the seller automatically acquires the money wherever the money is. So I'll say that's the klal. That's the klal that's happening over here. Now, that's the principle. Now, what's the chiddush of the Mishnah? This is very exciting. Very exciting. What is the chiddush of the Mishnah? The chiddush of the Mishnah, I will say, is, what if you're buying currency? So here, I'm buying gold coins, but I'm buying gold coins with silver coins. So, here's the chiddush of the Mishnah. So when you have two forms of currency, I will say, whichever form of currency is more usable, there's a better word than usable. Fungible? Yeah, in other words, whichever form of currency you can more easily use everywhere. Does that mean fungible? Yeah, good. Whichever form of currency, I'm just going to go with easily usable, right? Whichever form of currency is more easily usable, that's considered the money. That's the money. And whatever form of currency is less usable, that's the merchandise. Okay? So therefore, watch this. If I am buying, so I'm going over to Reuven. Reuven's got gold coins. I say, Reuven, I want to buy your gold coins, and I'm paying you with silver coins. The silver coins is the money. The gold coins is the merchandise. So therefore, I will say, go back to the Mishnah. Hazov kona es hakesef. So therefore, I will say, when in this case, when I'm buying gold coins, when I go over to Reuven and I take possession of the gold coins, now I will say, Reuven, so I've acquired the gold, and Reuven has acquired, the kesef has acquired the silver wherever it is. Well, so let's say again, I'm doing this transaction with Reuven in Baltimore, and it turns out I happen to keep my silver in Yerushalayim. So ultimately, halavai, we should all be zoch, right? So again, so I'll say, so therefore Reuven acquires the silver, even though the silver is not right here. So I will say, now take a look. Okay, fine, let's all right, look at the Rashi, because the first Rashi is actually very important, even though we're mamish running behind schedule over here. So look at Rashi. Halokech dinari zav tivuim b'dinari kesef. So again, I'm purchasing gold coins with silver coins. V'nasan lo dinari zahav. And I give Reuven. So again, sorry. Reuven gives me the gold coins. Meshichas hazav kona es hakesef labal hazav v'nischayiv lo zeh mishikibel dinari zav lo seis lo dinari kesef ve'ino yochol lachzer bo. So once Reuven gives me the gold coins and I do meshicha, I take possession of the gold coins. So first of all, transaction is done. Right? No backsies, as they say. Transaction is done, even though money has not been tendered, and Reuven, the owner of the gold, acquires the silver coins wherever they may be. Aval hakesef, Rashi says, eina kones hazav. But the reverse is not true. If I give Reuven the silver coins, right, that does not affect the transaction. Aval hakesef eino kones hazav, shimnasan lo dinari kesef tchila lo kana v'yicholin shneim machzor. This is incredible. So even if I gave Reuven the silver coins first, ultimately, again, either of us could retract. Either of us could renege. So good. So we'll say that's it. Let's go back to Mishnah. Hazov kones hakesef, hakesef eno kones hazov. So gold acquires silver. Silver doesn't acquire gold. When we say that means is when the silver coins are given as payment, that does not affect the transaction. I will say, what does it mean? It doesn't affect the transaction. It means that what? It means that what? Either party could renege. Either party could renege. Okay. Now we'll say we're just going to give a bunch of examples like this. Hanechoshes kona es hakesef. Similarly, again, copper has the ability to acquire silver. But silver doesn't acquire copper. We'll say, what does that mean? That when you have silver and copper, so remember again, silver coins are more easily used as currency than copper coins. Therefore, in this type of transaction, copper is the merchandise, silver is the money. So as soon as the copper coins, right, as soon as the buyer takes possession of the copper coins, so ultimately transaction is complete, money is acquired by the seller wherever the money may be, and irreversible. But again, if the silver coins were given, that does not affect transactional totality. Mo'os haros konas es hayafos, v'hayafos eno konas es haros. So we'll say similarly again, if you have bad coins, or we'll say bad coins are coins that are not easily usable. They're kind of out of circulation. So we'll say, so once again, those are going to be the merchandise, as opposed to mo'os yafos, good money, which is easily usable money, that's going to be the money. Asimon konas hamatbea, v'hamatbea eno konas hasimon. So we'll say, again, asimon will bring a smile to your face if you are above the age of 45, right? Otherwise, you have no idea what we're talking about. Right? Younger?
They don't have asimony anymore?
Maish. Oh my gosh, you just dated yourself. Take out your AARP card. I don't know what do you have going on over here. Ridiculous. No. You can't find... Maish, we want to talk after Shir. All right. Are you still looking for payphones also, like on the street? Like so the Gemara says as follows. So asimon, as we're going to see, is an unminted coin, a slug. It's an unminted coin. So I will say you can't. So remember, an asimon has value because just remember again, their coins were made of actual precious metals. Right? Their coins are made of precious metals. So asimon acquires the matbea and a konas asimon. So we'll say these are all the same cases, right? So an asimon will be merchandise. Therefore, taking of the asimon affects transactional reality, while ultimately, again, the matbea does not. Metaltlin kones hamatbea, matbea ena kones metaltlin. Similarly, again, so I'll say, so remember, when you take possession of metaltlin, merchandise, that acquires for the seller the money, but taking of the money does not create the transaction. Ze'aklal, kol metaltlin kolin zeh. So I'll say, similarly, again, metaltlin have the ability to acquire one another. So I'll say, this is our first principle in the Mishnah. Our first principle in the Mishnah is we'll say now the chiddush over here is when you are engaging in a transaction to buy coins. So we'll say so one of the coins will be merchandise, one of the coins will be money. How do you know which is which? Whichever is more easily usable as currency, that's the coin. The one less usable is the merchandise. The halacha is a transaction is only solidified when you take possession of the merchandise, even though money has not been offered. At that point, money becomes the property of the seller. Transaction is irreversible. Tendering of money does not create transactional irreversibility. Good. All movable property acquires each other. So we'll say, listen to this. Let's say I'm going in and purchasing produce from Ruvain. I do Mashicha on the payros, but I did not yet pay. So we saw this already. Once in the transaction, the purchaser takes possession, does Mashicha on the merchandise, the transaction is done. Irreversible, even though money has not been tendered, and the seller acquires the money wherever the money may be. But if I gave money but didn't do Mashicha, then I have either party has the ability to renege. Aval Amru, bro, say, watch this is incredible. So we'll say, this is actually really incredible. What this says is, halacha l'maisa, I'm transacting with Ruvain, right? I'm about to buy merchandise, payros. I give Ruvain, here's the $100. I hand him $100. After I did the money, I say, Ruvain, I changed my mind. Give me my money back. What's the halacha? You have the right to reverse. But it says you can, but aval amru mishe parame anshe dar hamabel umidar aflaga. He who extracted punishment from the generation of the flood and the generation of the dispersion, gracious, who asidli parame mishe eno omer bediburo. Wow. I will say, if after you pay for something, you absolutely have the halachic right to renege and to reverse the transaction, but it's dishonest. You gave your word and you gave your money. So just understand, can you back out of the transaction? You can, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who extracted punishment from the generation of the Mabul, of the dispersion, ultimately again will extract punishment from you as well. Now, Bosai, that is pretty severe stuff. We call that Mishapara. Why such severity attached to something that is technically legal? We'll discuss. So the Gemara goes weiter. Rabbi Shimon Omer Kol Shakesef Biado Yadal Yor. Rabbi Shimon says that's not the way it works. Rabbi Shimon says whoever has the money, halacha l'maisa, he has the upper hand. So Bosai, it appears to you what Rabbi Shimon is saying is once I paid for something, I can't just walk away and say no, I'm out. Because again, the seller could say, you can't do anything, I'm holding your money. Rabbi Shimon says the person who's holding the money has the upper hand. Again, we'll see that in the Gemara. Masnila Rabbi Shimon Berei Hazov Kones HaKesef. So I will say Rabbi taught to Rabbi Shimon his son that Zav, so gold acquires silver, which I will say is what we saw in the Mishnah, that Allah said, I'm buying gold with silver coins. The tendering of silver coins does not affect the transaction, that's the money. But once I take the gold, once I do Mashiach on the gold, so the seller acquires the silver coins wherever they may be. Amarle, so he said, Rabbi, Shanis lanu bi'aldusecha, hakesef kones hazav. But they said, Rebbe, you taught us when you were young a different halacha, right? You taught us when you were young that ultimately, again, the silver acquires the gold, which sounds like what? The Rebbe said in his youth that silver is the merchandise and gold is the coin. So which one is it? The Gemara says, hazav kones hakesef. So ultimately, again, so Rebbe, when you were young, you taught us that the silver is the merchandise, the gold is the coin, and then when you got older, you taught us that the gold is the merchandise and the silver is the coin. What's going on? So bi'aldusecha my savar ubiziknusei my savar. Rebbe, what did you hold in your youth? And what did you hold in your old age? So listen to this. I will say, by the way, I just want to point out something absolutely amazing. We don't have time for it. I will say this line, Biyalduseha Maisar Beziknuseh Maisar. I will say, what does that line teach you? I will say, people are supposed to think differently in their youth than in their old age. Life is all about change. Life is all about personalistic evolution. And if I'm the same person when I'm young, then when I'm old, and if I think the same way when I'm young and then when I'm older, we'll say, that is a stunted life. That is a stunted life. Life is all about change, and one of the most exciting things to be able to look at is how we were when we were young, and hopefully, the tremendously different trajectory we are on now that we are old. If there's stagnation, if you could look back at your youth and you're the same person now as when you were young, Rahman al-Islan, that's tragic. That's tragic. The Gemara is building this in Be'aldusei my savar or Beziknusei my savar. Change is the most important thing in life. Let's go back to Be'aldusei my savar. So Be'aldusei savar, Dava dechashiv havitiba, Kaspa de lo chashiv havipeira. When I was young, I thought that gold, that was more important, that's considered the coin, and silver, that is less important, is considered the merchandise, and therefore the kanile peir lativa, and the merchandise acquires the money. Beziknusei my savar. In my old age, what did I think? Okay, at least we made it 10 days, right? The charif. Right, kaspa the charif have tiva. So money, which I will say is what? Money charif means it's more easily usable. Rashi says yotzei ba'otzava over the sochar. Money, which is more easily usable, that's considered to be the coin. Dava the lo charif have peira. But ultimately, again, gold, which is not easily usable, that's the merchandise. So kanali peira lativa. So we'll say it's very interesting. The principle doesn't change. The principle is the same. Merchandise acquires money. Money doesn't acquire merchandise. It's just that Rebbe had different conceptions between his youth and his older age as to what's the definition of money. Is money the item that's less expensive, or is money the item that's more easily usable? So ultimately, again, in his youth, is money the item that is more chashuv, or money the item that is more usable? Okay, so Amar Ravashi, ki alduse mistabra. So Ravashi says, I think that Rebbe's approach in his youth seemed to be a bit more clear, a bit more evident. Mediktani hanechoshes kanas hakesef. Because what does the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says that copper acquires silver, which means Rabbi say that in a copper-silver transaction, when you're acquiring both coins, copper is the merchandise and silver is the coin. Now watch this. So if you hold that silver compared to gold ultimately is merchandise, like Rebbe's youth, then the Gemara says, then I understand why copper is merchandise compared to silver. Because even though when it comes ultimately to gold, when compared to gold, it's considered merchandise. When compared to copper, it is going to be coinage. But if you hold that halacha l'maisa, silver when compared to gold, silver is the coin, then then if when compared to gold, silver is going to be the coin, then I will say when compared to copper, where again silver compared to copper, number one is more chashiv, and number two is more easily usable, it goes without saying. So Gemara says, no. Even with that, you would still need to say it. Why? Why? Listen to this. So hani priti ba'asra desagi inhu charifi tfei mekaspa. Because we'll say in a place where copper coins are usable, copper coins are the most usable form of currency, even more than silver. So the Gemara says, I would have thought, therefore they should be considered to be coins. Kamash malon kevan diika duchta delo sagi be peirahavi. But I will say kamash malon that even though where copper is usable, it is the most usable type of currency. But since there are many locations where copper coins are not usable, therefore silver, when compared to copper, silver is going to be the coinage, and ultimately copper is going to be the merchandise. Incredible. The Af Rabbi Chia savar dava tivahavi. Even Rabbi Chia held that ultimately, again, gold is considered to be the coin. Remember, that's the version of Rabbi's youth. The version of Rabbi's youth is that when you have a gold-silver transaction, gold is the coin and silver is the merchandise. Dirav ozif dinar mibarte. Rabbi Chia. What's the interesting case over here? Rav went ahead and lent a dinar to. He borrowed a dinar from the daughter of Rabbi Chia. Okay, l'sof iyakir dinare, but then the value of dinarim went up. Asla kamed Rabbi Chia. He came before Rabbi Chia, Amar lei, and said Rabbi Chia said to him, Amar lei zil shlim lei tivin v'tiklin. Go ahead and pay her back the best dinarim, Now I will say, so now watch this. If you hold that gold is considered to be coinage, then shapir, that's fine. You borrowed coins, give back coins. Watch this. But if you held that Allah gold is considered to be merchandise, then havile sa'a bisa'a va'asr. Okay. It's like too much for one day. I will say, okay, very quickly. There is a concept of ribis, interest, right? You're not allowed to pay interest. When a Jew is borrowing money from a Jew, can't pay interest. So I will say there's a concept called sa'a bisa'a, which means like this. If I borrow a sa'a of produce, from sa'a is a measurement. You are not allowed to contract to pay back a sa'a of produce. I will say why? Because measurements of or volume of produce, the value of that always fluctuates. So the problem is I could borrow a sa'a of produce that's worth $100 today, and then in a year from now that I have to pay back, it's quite possible that's what? It's going to be worth $150. So that's called the prohibition of sa'a bisa'a. So I'll say, so now watch this. When you borrow gold coins, and now he was being told to pay back in gold coins, that works if you hold that gold coins are what? Money. Because if you borrow $100, you could give back $100. Even though the value of money also changes, we don't call that ribis. But if you hold that gold is merchandise, I will say, then you have to be careful about borrowing gold coins and paying back gold coins. Why? Because that may be sa'a bis sa'a. So the fact that he told him to pay back gold coins indicates that what? That halacha l'maisa, gold is considered to be coinage and not merchandise. So the Gemara says, no. Rav dinari havile. Rav in fact already had dinarim. He had money to pay back. V'cheivan davilu dinari nase ke'omer la havani ad sheyavo b'ni o ad she'emtza mafteach. So ultimately, again, since Rav at the time that he borrowed it already had dinarim in his possession, so I will say we're going to see this case as well, that when you borrow something for what's called a relatively short amount of time, some of the halachos concerning ribis, concerning interest, don't necessarily apply. So this is like a case where he has it in his house, but he doesn't have immediate access to it. So he says, lend it to me until I can have access. Rabbi say, so I have to stop over here. So much to do, so much to accomplish. Rabbi say, well, stop over here. So I'll say, so again, what I just want to point out is what we're leaving off with is the principle. So the principles of the Mishnah we know, merchandise acquires money, money doesn't acquire merchandise. When you're dealing with two different types of coinage, the easily usable one is the money, less easily usable one one is the merchandise. What we're leaving off with over here now, Bose, is the machlokes in Rebbe. What is the status of gold? Is gold considered to be merchandise, or is gold considered to be coinage? To be continued tomorrow, Bose. Shkoyach. All right, Chevra on Zoom, have a good Shabbos, everyone. Wonderful to see all of you. Such a schos. Really good Shabbos. Oh, liquid. That's what, liquid. So you are a finance person. All right.